family speeds through Paris in a rusty car, dad drugged, mom yelling, and their clueless teen driving. They crash through cafes yet still outrun assassins. It's pure organized chaos, and it shows they survive not through skill, but by sticking together. The story begins with the end of an era. International crime boss Liam McCaffrey dies in prison at the ripe old age of 76. But we aren't focusing on him. We're focusing on his son, Dan, our favorite secret assassin turned family man. Dan wants to give his wife, Jessica, a romantic gift. But because he's Dan, he doesn't just hand it to her. No, he climbs the exterior wall of a building while she's at a bar. When Jessica finds a box in the room, she opens it to find a necklace. Before she can even blink, Dan is already inside, putting it on her neck using his ghost skills. Sweet, but also slightly terrifying if you think about it. But the romance is cut short because their son Kyle calls. Little Max has made a mess at home. They have to leave the room and straight home immediately. Classic. Later, the whole family heads to Jessica's house for a gathering. It's chaotic. At one point, Kyle accidentally throws a knife toward his grandmother. Yep, a knife, and Dan catches it midair with his assassin reflexes. Totally normal family dinner behavior. At the dinner table, Dan puts his daughter Nina on the phone, who is living in London. Things get awkward when Jessica's dad starts trashing their criminal grandfather, not realizing he's talking about Dan's dad. To lighten the mood and break the awkward tension, Jessica reminds them how last year nobody ended up eating turkey because her dad tried to burn the house down instead of roasting the turkey. Jessica apologizes later, but Dan is chill about it because, for him, this family is everything. They get interrupted when their little one, Max, approaches them and tell Nina want to talk with mom. Now, here's the first secret. Jessica gets a job offer in Ohio but is too scared to tell Dan, so she talks to Nina asking for advice. Nina tells her mom to tell dad as soon as possible. Christmas is here and Dan is furious when he remembers that Nina won't come home this Christmas. Jessica tries to calm him down and assures their daughter is now an adult, which means she has now an option to choose. In the morning, Dan goes to work, and his secretary gives him some of the upcoming projects from the international client to check their security. When Dan hears an offer to test security at a bank in London, he immediately accepts it so she can meet her daughter too. So, despite the fact that nobody wants to go, Dan forces a family Christmas trip to London. Jessica is not very okay with spending Christmas in London, but Dan just desperately wants the family to be together. On the way, he tries to teach Kyle how to drive, which results in a car crash. They arrive in London to surprise their daughter, Nina. Kyle straight goes to use the bathroom. He hears the shower running and assumes the room is empty, until Omar suddenly steps out, dripping wet and cheerful. Omar calmly introduces himself. Nina rushes over and explains that Omar is her boyfriend. Only then do Jessica and Dan learn the truth. Jessica is instantly impressed by Omar's muscular build. Dan, on the other hand, is blindsided, shocked that Nina has a boyfriend at all, and even more annoyed that he's buff, friendly, and does parkour. No matter how polite Omar is, Dan just can't warm up to him. The next day, they go out. Omar does some stunts, little Max tries to copy him and falls, and Dan goes full overprotective dad mode. Omar actually gives Dan some solid advice about not suffocating his kids, warning him that his own father was strict and now they don't talk. Foreshadowing? Maybe. Meanwhile, the kids want to go back to the hotel and Dan advises Omar to call his father. He is protective because he loves him. The next morning, Dan visits the bank. He studies the layout, analyzes the systems, and quickly gains access to a hidden entry point. The supposed manager walks in and tells him to continue with his assignment. Dan casually remarks that their security is embarrassingly weak, then demonstrates by unlocking the concealed door with ease. The manager looks impressed. Meanwhile, Jessica rehearses how she's going to break the Ohio news to Dan. Before she can settle on the right words, the doorbell rings, and what she sees leaves her stunned. Back at the bank, Dan explains that proper security needs hardwired systems. Otherwise, anyone with skills can breach them. He proves his point by shutting everything down effortlessly. A staff member shows up, insisting they're not allowed to be in the restricted area. Dan brushes him off, claiming there's an angry customer waiting outside, causing the worker to hurry off. Dan and the manager proceed to the vault. It requires an employee keycard, but Dan has already lifted it from the worker earlier. The vault opens. The moment they step inside, Dan grabs the manager in a chokehold and demands to know who he really is, revealing he's already suspicious. The earlier staff member didn't recognize this man at all. The imposter says he needs to reach into his pocket. Dan allows it, and the man pulls out his phone, showing that Jessica has already been captured. He orders Dan to open a specific safety deposit box. Dan complies. Inside, he finds a key. The man then drops the act and reveals the truth. He shows Dan an old photo of himself as a child, standing beside Dan's father and the housekeeper's son. Dan is stunned. The imposter claims to be his half-brother. His name is Finn. Finn tells him he has no way out. Dan must take the fall for the robbery, or Finn's men will kill him. With no other choice, Dan walks out pretending to hold Finn hostage. An employee hits the alarm. They escape the building, and Dan demands Jessica's return. A car pulls up and releases her. Moments later, the police swarm the area. Jessica discovers a gun taped to her hand. They flee through an alley, duck into a shop, and, desperate to hide the weapon, snatch a woman's handbag so Jessica can conceal her hand. Finn eventually discovers that Dan has taken the key. Furious, he orders his men to turn the car around. At the park, the kids are hanging out together when Dan calls. Hearing the chaos over the phone, Nina quickly understands what's happening and urges everyone to move immediately. Meanwhile, Dan and Jessica are being pursued by Finn. They manage to meet up with the rest of the family and slip into a crowded market. Jessica finally manages to ditch the gun that had been taped to her hand. They all hop onto a bus, with Kyle spiraling in panic, until Finn suddenly storms inside, armed. He launches into a bitter rant about his miserable childhood, how he was always overlooked, and how he envies their family. He even mocks the kids, calling them pimple-faced brats. Finn demands the key back. Dan lunges at him, wrestles the gun away, and the fight spills onto the upper deck of the bus. In the middle of terrified passengers, the two brothers brawl. Finn pulls out a knife. Worried for Dan, Jessica rushes forward. She grabs a fire extinguisher, smacks Finn with it, and sprays him, but the foam barely slows him down. Finn grabs her by the neck, tightening his grip. Thinking fast, Dan reveals the key and tosses it out the bus window, where it lands on a passing cyclist's bike. Finn panics. Dan jumps off the bus and sprints after it, determined to retrieve the key before Finn does. They regroup at a restaurant. Kyle tells Dan he prefers his mom's side of the family, making Jessica very happy. Ouch. There, Dan meets a Chinese contact who owes him a favor to get supplies. They realize they aren't safe in London. Omar, the boyfriend, nonchalantly agrees to join them on the run. They take a boat to Paris. Why Paris? Because apparently that's where Dan grew up, which is new to even his wife. While they travel, Finn goes to their late father's mansion. He meets the old butler, Vikram. Finn produces the key he recovered, enters the secret chamber, and activates the God Mode system that controls the entire criminal empire. He is now fully in charge. In Paris, the family needs a safe house. Dan takes them to the home of his ex-girlfriend, Svetlana. And guys, of course, she used to be a Russian spy. Jessica is thrilled, sarcasm heavily implied. Svetlana feeds them, but things are tense. Dan wants to make peace with his brother, so he arranges a meeting at a museum because metal detectors mean no guns. The meeting is a disaster. Finn is consumed by jealousy and calls Dan Daddy's little prince. Dan slaps him and warns him not to touch his family. But Finn has already put a bounty on Dan's head. Back at the mansion, Finn calls up a group of assassins and tells them whoever takes down Dan will have their rate tripled. Back at the safe house, Dan thinks he's safe, but Svetlana betrays him. She drugs his drink because she needs the money, but she feels bad about it, classic complicated ex-behavior. The assassins arrive, and the family has to flee in Svetlana's car. Here is the best part. Kyle, the kid who can't drive, is behind the wheel. He is smashing into everything, driving like a maniac through the streets of Paris while assassins shoot at them. But somehow, his terrible driving makes him unpredictable. He causes the bad guys to crash and the family survives. They hide on a rooftop. Dan wants to go it alone to protect them, but the kids step up. They say, "We do this as a family." The plan? Break into the ancestral mansion and wipe Finn's data from the server. They scout the mansion. It's guarded by snipers. Dan and Omar go to the roof. The family stays in the car to hack the system. They need a distraction, so Omar calls in a favor. Suddenly, a massive group of Greenpeace protesters shows up at the front gate. Finn is distracted by the chanting hippies. Dan uses a stash box from his childhood to find a fork, yes, a dinner fork, to pry open a window. He drops in, but Finn is waiting. He catches Dan. It looks like game over. Finn's men take Dan to a kill room, but Dan is slick. He drops a flash drive on the carpet before they take him. Jessica realizes something is wrong. She goes full action hero. She jumps from the roof onto a balcony, barely making it. She finds the flash drive Dan dropped and plugs it in. Now Kyle can start the hacking. Chaos erupts. Jessica fights a female assassin in the library, using books to defend herself before knocking the lady out with a stone head. Meanwhile, Dan escapes the dungeon by turning off the lights and taking out the guards in the dark. Kyle finishes the hack. Finn watches in horror as his money and data are deleted from the screen. Poof, gone. Dan confronts Finn. Finn tries to shoot, but he's out of ammo. He runs to the roof and they fight over an old chapel. Dan wins the brawl and ties Finn up with the bell rope, leaving him dangling for the police. The police arrive to arrest everyone. But wait, Omar's dad shows up. And guess who he is? The Secretary General of Interpol. Dan is looking at Omar like, "Are you kidding me?" Omar just shrugs and says he tried to tell them. If they had known this earlier, they could have saved so much trouble. In the end, Jessica finally reveals her secret about the job in Ohio. Dan is genuinely happy for her and gives her a kiss of congratulations. We jump forward 11 months. The family is living a normal life in Ohio. Dan visits Finn in prison for Christmas, gifting him the coat he stole and playing cards with him. They share a laugh, And that, folks, is the family plan too. If you enjoyed this recap, smash that like button and stay subscribed. Until the next one, movie pals.